Czar, Kivo, Process, CT, DJ Supersport, 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 Supersport. The souls that are forsaken, the wars that you are making. My God, body lyrics touches war-torn nation.
Justice has not been served to George Floyd family, and many families who have never gotten that single day where the officer who killed their loved one was never prosecuted, never brought to justice, and many of them are still serving, killing other people. Just like George Floyd, who killed a lot of people, continued to kill, finally they got taken. But you know what? I'm going to say this. I personally believe that in this moment right now, people are starting to get back to normal. There is nothing normal about a police killing black people the way they are. After George Floyd, it was Dalal Eid. After George Floyd, they had been killing people. Nothing has fundamentally changed in the system. We haven't even passed a single police accountability in that state house. We have not passed a single bill at the federal level.
That's right.
That ain't right.
We haven't done anything.
That's right.
George Floyd has been killed. People have been awakened. The policies have not been enacted. Nothing has fundamentally changed to keep our community safe. That is why we are here. That is why we have to continue to come out and protest and demand justice. This is not a game. Our lives are not a game.
Speak.
We are trying to change a system that continues to kill black people. And now we are standing in front of a courthouse that will not even allow the proceedings to be laid live. What the hell are they hiding? What are they hiding? But that is what has been happening in this country for far too long. And by the way, that jury that they are picking today, they're picking from all over across the state of Minnesota. And many of these police officers think that if they can get a jury from northern Minnesota, that somehow they can get away with it. They cannot get away with the murder that billions of people across the world saw, that we saw. They can never get away with it. And if they think somehow the court systems in this world may not bring them to justice, I personally believe that they will meet their Lord, and their Lord will be judging them for the actions that they committed. I believe that. But I believe right now we are in a moment, Minnesotans especially. We didn't choose to have this moment come to us, but this moment chose us.
Right.
Because I believe there is something good in us, in our activism, in our brotherhood and sisterhood, from all different walks of life. We have to carry this light of justice so that generations that are yet to be born can feel free. Generations that are yet to be born can breathe without being killed and choked to death. We have a responsibility. So for all of you who are watching this, you should have been out here already with us. For all of you who will watch this later, you should have been out here. Stop Netflixing. Stop thinking that this is a performative justice. We are trying to protect human lives.
That's right.
And it takes sacrifice, it takes time. So come out, this is the first day. This trial is expected to go quickly according to the judge, but it ain't gonna be a quickly. We need to continue to come out, we need to continue to demand justice, and we need to do this for ourselves, most importantly, but for our human race and for all of us. So with that, I think I could bring up maybe somebody else who wants to speak, but I just want to say to all of you, we have to demand justice by what? By
Any means necessary.
Justice for George! Justice for George Floyd!
Next one. $6 million man.
Thomas Lane, and Tu Tao all helped Senior Officer Derek Chauvin detain George Floyd.
So we're approaching the federal court building. You can see it's fenced off. Lane and another officer stood by and watched and didn't do nothing to stop it. So they're all complicit in George Floyd's murder.
Middle of the winter, we outside.
We outside no matter what. So we at this federal court building downtown St. Paul, Minnesota, in the freezing cold, demanding justice for George Floyd and all stolen lives. It's the Justice for George Floyd caravan. Robert Street is officially shut down. We want justice for George Floyd, justice for Marcus Golden, justice for Cordell Handy, justice for Joffrey Smith, justice for Marcus Golden, justice for Phil Quinn, justice for Terrence Franklin, justice for Billy Hughes. You did? Now.
What do we want? When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Justice.
When do we want it?
Now.
We will now have the head of Black Lives Matter, Trayvon Cruz, there for words, and then the father or the grandfather of Brian Quinones, who was killed by the Richfield police. And I want to say that we're out here asking for these other officers to be held accountable. They held George Floyd's body down, and if they would not have held that man down, Derek Chauvin would not have been able to kill George Floyd. They showed no humanity. They showed no humanity for George Floyd. They helped to hold George Floyd's body down. They helped to conspire and murder of George Floyd. And we need these other officers to be held accountable. There was no empathy. There was no humanity. There was nothing to stop them. There was no one out there, no officer out there to tell Derek Chauvin to get off of George Floyd's neck as he pleaded for his wife, as he pleaded for his mother. There was no one to say, hey man, get off of his neck. He said he can't breathe. All of the officers need to be held accountable. Because if someone on the street conspires and helps somebody kill another human being, anybody on the street would be held accountable. So why should it be different when it comes to the police? Somebody should have stood up and said that you're killing a human being.
Come on.
Either one of those three officers stood up for that man. None of them stood up for that officer. And then they want to come and tell us that we're protesting and we're wrong for standing up for human life. We refuse to let you tell us that we're wrong for standing up.
That's right.
We refuse. We not busting no windows. We not doing nothing wrong to nobody. We standing up for human beings that you stole from us.
Come on.
Justice for who?
George Floyd!
Justice for who?
George Floyd!
If George don't get it,
Shut it down!
if George don't get it,
Shut it down!
if George don't get it,
Shut it
and
down!
all the other lives that led up to George, if Justin don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Ordell don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Brian don't get it,
Shut it down!
Ordell don't get it,
Shut it down!
Demetrius don't get it,
Shut it down!
Jeffrey don't get it,
Shut it down!
Marcus don't get it,
Shut it down!
Orlando don't get it,
Shut it down!
Jamar don't get it,
Shut it down!
if Kobe don't get it,
Shut it down!
Dante don't get it,
Shut it down!
if we don't get it,
Shut it down!
shut
It down!
Shut it down! Shut it down!
Shut it down!
Justice for who? George Floyd! Justice for who? George Floyd! Say his name!
George Floyd!
Say his name! George Floyd! Say his name!
George Floyd!
Thank you!
Black lives! Matter. Black lives! Matter. Black lives! Matter. Black lives! Matter. Tutau, Derek Lane, and the other officers involved are complicit in the murder of George Floyd. Not only are they complicit, the police tell young black youth and community members, if you see something, say something. Tutau seen something. Derek Lane seen something. Not only did they see something, they were involved in something. They were involved in murder. They were involved in terror, and they didn't do nothing about it. But they tell our kids, and they tell the youth, if you see somebody stealing a piece of candy or something, you should say something. But they won't tell the police, if you see a police officer killing somebody, you should stop them from doing that. So we're out here to change the culture of policing in the state of Minnesota and hold the police in our state accountable. Coming up next, we have
These three cops, you got two of them that are going to claim that they're just weak on the job. You've been a human being your whole fucking life. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Tutau, this guy's going to say, I never touched him. You should have touched Derek Chauvin.
That's right.
You should have got Derek Chauvin off his neck. But you didn't. You're guilty. You're complicit. And the system is complicit.
That's right.
Because before George Floyd was Brian Quinones.
That's right.
Was Kobe Heisler.
That's right.
Hey, they had a free-for-all in a week. They killed Kobe Heisler, and a week later they killed Brian Quinones. What's wrong with you people? There is no humanity. These three guys are guilty. As much as if they stood on his neck. And it doesn't matter your time on the job. And it doesn't matter that you didn't touch him. Just like the 5 people that killed Brian Quinones and the ones involved in Kobe Heisler's killing. Where's your humanity? Your system sucks. And you can fall back on qualified immunity. It's not even a freaking law. It doesn't justify what you do to these people and what you do to these families.
Come on.
I stood in the street, and I still stay in the street, and I yelled George Floyd's name. Because these guys are guilty, and they need to be found guilty. And just because Chauvin pled guilty so he can take the heat off, no. No, you have to be publicly held accountable. You have to be held accountable in a court of law. What you did was wrong. What they did to Brian and what they did to Kobe and what they did to Philando.
That's right.
That stuff is wrong. Where is your humanity? These people, because before you were cops and before you were part of a system that let you do this, you were a human being. That's right, Grandpa. Where'd you lose it? You guys, 1 week on the job, you're setting yourself up to fall into that system to be one of those cops. Because you let your boss, your superior, tell you what to do. And he's a convicted murderer. Find another job. You can't maintain your humanity. Find another job. I'll yell George Floyd. Say his name.
George Floyd.
But I'm going to yell a bunch of other names. And I'm going to start with my grandson. Because I miss him. And he should be here.
That's right.
And your inhumanity ruined a lot of lives. Brian Quinones, say his name. Colby Heisler.
Colby Heisler.
Philando Castile.
Philando Castile.
Jafford Smith. Demetrius Hill.
Demetrius Hill.
Cordell Handy.
Cordell Handy.
Hardell Sherrill.
Hardell Sherrill.
I'm telling you. Justin Tigan.
Justin Tigan. Bilal E.
Dante Wright.
Dante Wright.
Hey, those names aren't the flavor of the week. And I don't mean that to sound horrible. But these names need to be out in the press. These names need to be kept repeated over and over and over again until humanity is found and given to these people and given to these families. Because these cops that killed them and the system that let them get away with it has no humanity.
George Floyd. George Floyd. Save George Floyd. Next, we're going to have Brandon from BLM come up and say a few powerful words. Black lives. Black lives. George Floyd, say his name. George Floyd. Say his name. George Floyd. What's his name? George Floyd. Say his name. George Floyd. Scream 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 his name. George Floyd. And I say one down, you say three to go. One down. 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 Three to go. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Justice. When do we want it? Now. If George don't get it, shut it down. 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 If George don't get it, shut it down.
One thing I want to focus or highlight today is how this narrative keeps changing. And it has continued to change depending on who's telling the story and how far along into the story we are. We can never, ever, ever forget the first headline that came out after George Floyd was murdered was that a man died of a medical incident.
That's right.
That was the first headline that the police reported and then the press reported following their lead. That was what you were told. That was what you were going to continue to be told until the video came out. Until the video came out before the police or anybody could do anything to get rid of that video. That's the narrative you were told, was that he died of a medical incident. But now we have one cop who's guilty of murder.
Right.
Guilty of murder. And throughout that whole, in between George Floyd being murdered and Chauvin getting arrested, charged, there was a bunch of people who were saying, oh, he should have stopped resisting. George Floyd shouldn't have resisted. I don't know how you can watch that video of a man who was lifeless for the majority of 9 minutes and 29 seconds and say that he was resisting, when all he was doing was calling out for his mother when he was laying flat on his stomach with his hands behind his back. That officer with his knee on George Floyd's neck is convicted of murder.
That's right.
Convicted of murder. And then pled guilty in his federal trial. So he admits to doing it. What could have been done to save George Floyd's life that day?
A push.
In reality, he should have resisted. He was being murdered.
That's right.
He was being murdered. Who could have helped him? Who could have helped him? Not a citizen. Why? Because they were being threatened and harassed by the other 3 officers who were standing there. So if the people couldn't do it, if George Floyd couldn't save himself, who should it have been to save George Floyd's life? Who should it have been to keep George Floyd from being murdered? Because we have to say it, Chauvin is a convicted murderer.
That's right.
The murder that we saw on the video is now deemed by the state as a murder. So, who could have stopped him from being murdered? The other 3 officers. But what did they do? They stood idly by and let their co-worker squeeze the life out of a man who was begging and pleading for his mother. Squeeze the life out of a man who should have resisted because he was being murdered. When we talk about the narrative, all these conservative folks, all these pro-police folks want to say, well, there's a few bad apples. Where were the good apples in this incident? The other 3 sat by and did nothing as their co-worker murdered a man in cold blood. Is that a good cop or a bad cop to you? Are those the police officers you want patrolling your neighborhood? The ones that's going to let their bad cop friend kill anybody for any reason and do nothing to stop it? All these people who want to say the good apple, bad apple narrative, you have to realize that was murder. The state says that was murder. The court says that was murder. And if you still can't see that was murder, you need to take a good, long, hard look in the mirror and just know in your heart that you do not have humanity, you do not have human lives, human being, the well-being of every person on this planet. You do not have it in your heart or your mind. You do not care about anybody except for you, and you think that you're above being put into these situations. You think that you're above, you would never get put into this scenario. But we see time and time again, they keep coming up with new ways to kill us. They keep coming up with new ways to kill our character after they murder us. Now these people want to say that George Floyd was a career criminal. That he lived a life of crime, so you're saying he should be killed in the street, he should be murdered in the street? What is your view on law enforcement? What is your view on law and order? And then Joe Biden the other day said that George Floyd had a larger global impact than MLK did. George Floyd never asked for that.
That's right.
George Floyd, the only fight that he was fighting was for his fucking life.
Come on.
And he lost that fight because 3 officers let a 4th get away with the murder.
That's right.
So we're standing out here today to demand that those other 3 officers, just like if me and my friend went around committing crime and killed somebody, doesn't matter who did it, me or them, if we were together, they didn't stop me, they didn't turn me in, they helped you, they helped me, they're going to get in trouble for that. They're going to be held accountable for that. Whether they are accomplices, whether they are accessory, whether they are aiding and abetting, whatever the case may be, these men are complicit in the murder of George Floyd.
That's right.
These men helped murder George Floyd. These men stopped anybody from intervening. And that is what their job does. That is what they were told to do when they put on that blue uniform and the badge, is to protect those blue lives more than any other one.
That's right.
Protect the life that people chose to have. Protect that job. Protect anyone who's wearing the same suit as you, as opposed to anyone who has the same blood inside your body as you. Anybody who has the same heartbeat as you. They think that it's more important. A blue uniform and a badge makes them more important than you, me, anyone out here. So what we are demanding is that they are held accountable for what they did, because they're not just pawns in this. They had an active role in murdering George Floyd, and that's what we are demanding, that they be found guilty for their part in the murder of George Floyd. So say his name.
George Floyd.
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 Say one down, you say three to go. One down.
Three to go.
One down.
Three to go.
One down.
Three to go.
One down.
Three to go.
One down.
Three to go.
One down.
Three to go.
One down.
Three to go.
One down.
Three to go.
One down.
Three to go.
One down.
Three to go.
That's all I got for you today.
Give another round of applause to Brandon. No good cops in a racist system. No good cops in a racist system. We got DJ, he's gonna come up real quick, say a few words. Give him a big round of applause. He's been stomping off for almost 2 years now, boots on the ground non-stop.
I'm DJ, I'm with TCC today, and I just want to talk about the case right now because the system is designed to make sure the people can, right? They just, because I mean, the Floyd, when they killed Floyd, that was, what, a year and a half, going on 2 years? And keep it going on. They could have had these back to back and all that. They keep it going on and they separate it because they want to see how much we can. And the truth of the matter is, we fucking can. And we are going to stay out here until Floyd gets complete justice, okay? And once Floyd gets accountability, we're going to go back and we're going to reopen all the cases. Reopen all the cases.
All these
Reopen all the cases.
Reopen all the cases. Reopen all the cases.
Because there are so many Derek Chauvins that live in Minnesota and are freely walking around and still killing them. So we need to make sure we go back and we get those killer cops. We need to make sure we get some accountability for Floyd. And then we need to make sure that we get some legislation passed at the state level to ensure that this won't keep happening.
Right.
Because until we get that, we're still going to have them out here killing people like the Lavi. We're still going to have them out here assassinating people like Winston Smith. This isn't going to stop. We're still going to have Dante rights happening everywhere as long as we don't get a piece of paper that passed at the legislature that says we're not going to do this. So we need to make sure we stay out on these streets, right? And for the people who are still at home, here's what you can do. The families have bills we plan on introducing, right? January 31st. You can call your state rep. You can call your state senator. You can tell your city council members that you want them to support these bills. We need these to get passed. TCC is trying to get community control of the police. So we can make sure that we have a way to keep these cops accountable and that the people have the power. Because that's what we need at the end of the day. Because right now, it's good if we get these convictions, but I also need a written agreement that says if people start doing this and they keep doing this, the people that keep killing us, because they don't see us as human, right? They don't see black and brown people as human. That's how they get away with killing us. That's the only way you can sit here and watch your friend sit on someone for 9 minutes and watch them take their last breath, and then you don't see them as fucking human. And that's what this system does, is it dehumanizes these people. And so we need this legislation, and we need to make sure that there are consequences, okay? You don't get to just go around and do whatever the fuck you want and murder whoever you want at will. There will be consequences to your actions. Because right now, ain't no consequences. All they know is, the only thing that we told them is they can't sit on someone's neck for 9 minutes. So that means they're going to try to do it in 8. They're going to try to do it in 7. They're going to keep trying to hide it up like Kim Potter fucking did with Kobe Heisman. Okay? That's why we need to make sure we get this legislation to hold them accountable.